There's some really important options when you come out to Asia to retire. Cost of living, visa requirements, and healthcare costs and lifestyle. We're going to go through this today for Vietnam, the Philippines, and Thailand. So you're looking to come out to one of these areas. The first thing you need to look at is the visa options. Let's go through the retirement visa for Vietnam. There isn't one at the moment. There's only like a tourist visa. So you can come in for 90 days on what they call an e-visa. So as long as you're from one of the 80 countries, which I think my viewers are, you can come up to 90 days on an e-visa and then extend that for another 90 days for a fee. So you could in theory stay 6 months, then you kind of need to leave the country and come back and do the same again. They are talking in Vietnam about bringing in another visa, which sounds exciting. It's called the Vietnam Golden Visa Program, but it's not implemented as of now, September 2025. In the future, this could be a good option, but now, no. You've only got this really, tourist visa to come in, or this investment visa, which sounds not that great if I'm honest. So there's no retirement visa for Vietnam. Now, let's move on to the Philippines. The Philippines, they have what they call the SRRV, which is Special Retirement Resident Visa. This is a proper retirement visa for the Philippines. So this is a good option. It's flexible. It's got low requirements. I think the deposit's about $10,000 US. Depending on your age, that does vary. It can go up to 20,000. I was reading dollars. You have to kind of deposit, but it is dependent on a few factors. And you can come before 50 years old as well, guys. Moving on to the Thailand retirement visa. This is available to anybody over 50 years old, guys, and you need a minimum deposit in your bank of 800,000 Thai baht or a minimum income of 65,000 baht coming in per month, like as a pension. So these are the options for your visas. Philippines and Thailand, they both have official retirement visas. Vietnam, no. So for me, Philippines and Thailand win for the visas. Right, moving on to the next one, which is very important. This would be your cost of living when you come over to one of these areas. Now, there's a lot of debate online about the cost of living in these three areas, which is more expensive and which is cheaper. Now, I live in Thailand a long time. I've done a lot of research on the internet. And remember, this video is for you guys, and most of you are over 50 years old, which means, you don't want to live in a dive. Let's be honest. You're not a 20-year-old backpacker coming to one of these areas. If you are, you could live in one of these areas in Thailand, Philippines, or Vietnam for $1,000 a month, even less. But you're not. You're a 50-year-old guy plus coming to one of these areas to retire. I think it's completely different budget. So yes, you could live in each of these areas for $1,000 a month as a backpacker, living, scrimping and saving and living in, a 1-bedroom apartment in one of these places. And you could do that fine. But you guys are older. You don't want to do that. You need a higher budget. And I've looked at all the different budgets, and the vastly different. I've researched this before I did this video today, and it is ridiculous the different amounts of people that say different amounts of cost of living you need in these different countries. It's just ridiculous. It's like from $1,000 a month to $4,000 a month. It's ridiculous, the extreme. And I think all of these countries, you can have a nice quality of life in all of these countries for $2,000 a month. And I think that's in each of these countries, you can have a good lifestyle. Is one country more expensive than the other? Maybe, a little bit. It depends where you live in that country. If you live in Bangkok, in Thailand, yes, for sure it's going to be more expensive. If you live in Manila, in the Philippines, for sure it's going to be expensive. If you live in Da Nang, no. I think Da Nang is actually quite a lot cheaper, what I was reading. But even the guys that were living in Da Nang I've been reading about online, you know, most of them are saying you need $1,500 to $2,000 to have a good quality of life out there, which is similar to Thailand. So I think they're all within a little bit of each other. There's no big difference, you know, not a substantial difference to make a massive difference to you guys. I think there's other factors that are more important. Yes, for sure, money's important, but I think as long as you pick a certain area in the country you want to retire, it can adjust the budget slightly. So say, yes, someone comes to Bangkok, it's going to be very expensive. But if someone comes and retires in Pattaya, I think it's a lot cheaper. I'm talking about central Bangkok now, you know, or, you know, some real nice place on Samui, you know, in a very, very popular tourist area, then, you know, it's a lot more money. Or down in Phuket, you know, to rent accommodation in that area is more expensive. So you got to weigh up the pros and cons, you know, where do you want to retire in that country? But I can say the budget, I think, for all three countries is very, very similar. I think every country, you can live $1,500 to $2,000. I think $2,000 is the good amount to live in each of these countries, guys. If I was going to argue which is, you know, more the cheapest one out of the three, I honestly can't really say. You know, I think there's just such a vast difference where you live in these countries. So what I want you to do in the comments, put in what you're spending in each of these countries. If you're living in the Philippines, if you're living in Vietnam, if you're living in Thailand, what's your budget as a retiree? Now, yeah, some guy might chirp up, he's on $1,000 a month, but he's probably some young guy, you know, living up in Chiang Mai or some cheapo area, maybe in Da Nang, but maybe he's working online and he doesn't care about a lot of other stuff. Oh, guys, can you just do us a massive favour? Just press the red subscribe button. It really helps the channel. Thanks. And back to the video. Moving on to healthcare. Now, healthcare in these three places. Think first about Vietnam. So the quality in the healthcare definitely varies in this area. There's definitely good private hospitals in the major cities, you know, in Hanoi and, you know, some of the other big cities around Vietnam. And the costs are good there for the private hospitals. I think the insurance costs are good there. But if you get out the major cities, I think the healthcare is a bit of an issue. And there's going to be a problem with English-speaking staff in there. If you're out of the main cities and, you know, you're looking at not like government hospitals, not private hospitals there. Moving on to the Philippines, big advantage about the Philippines would be, you know, there's a lot of English-speaking staff in the hospital for sure, because the English level in the Philippines is a lot better. So that is definitely better. There are some good hospitals in the big cities, but you get out them big cities and you got problems. So it depends where you want to live in the Philippines. Fine if you live in a big city, but if, you know, you're an older guy and you're living right down in the sticks, yeah, you know, your hospital's not going to be that good. They might be able to speak English there, but the facilities are not going to be as good as other places in the cities, guys. So this is something to consider. Now, moving on to Thailand. I mean, Thailand notoriously has the best hospitals in the whole of Southeast Asia. So there's no competition. There's the best private hospitals in the whole of Southeast Asia. And the best hospital in Bangkok is Bumrungrad International Hospital. And that is known as the best hospital, you know, in Southeast Asia. So think of this when you come to one of these areas. Healthcare is kind of important, you know. Unfortunately, you guys are all over 50. At some stage, you're probably going to have to use your medical health insurance and use some of these facilities. Now, is English level in these hospitals good in Thailand? Absolutely. Fantastic, yes. In some of the public hospitals, no, not so much, guys. So as long as you got health insurance and you live in one of the big cities in either of these three countries, I think it's okay. The healthcare is okay. But if I was going to pick one where the healthcare is better than the others, it's 100% Thailand. The next topic is lifestyle and comfort. So let's look at the Vietnam to start with. There's some bustling cities around Vietnam. I think the lifestyle, the motorbikes might do your head in if you live there permanently. It's very much a motorbike culture. Yeah, in the other places too there is, but I think more so in Vietnam, especially with the honking on the horns. There's a lot of Western comforts, but less outside of the major cities, I think, in Vietnam. The Philippines, I think their English media is more available there and more kind of thrust upon you. There's a lot of Western food there, good shopping malls. You know, it's a relaxed lifestyle living there, I think, when you're out of the main big city. And one big thing, the people I think are amazing. You know, very, very friendly, very nice people that live in the Philippines, guys. So this is another good thing to think of. Oh, sorry guys, I had to come back to the room. It's suddenly absolutely thrown it down with rain. That's what happens because it's a rainy season at the moment in Thailand. I'm just back in my room now. So climate first, let's talk about Vietnam. So, you know, in the north of Vietnam, it's a lot cooler. They really do have, you know, proper winters where it gets very cold up in Hanoi. But obviously very tropical down the south. So there is quite a bit of difference, you know, depending where you live in the country. If you're going to live in Vietnam, it does get very hot and humid at certain times of year in some parts of the country. Philippines is just hot and humid, the same as Thailand. So both these countries are just hot and humid, and they don't really have a winter, you know. It's always hot and tropical in both these countries, Philippines and Thailand. Now, environment, this is a biggie. When I started reading about this, I was like, okay, I'd not really thought about this in this much depth. But, you know, Vietnam definitely, you know, has more natural disasters than Thailand. And so does the Philippines. And the Philippines actually looks like one of the worst areas. You know, they suffer a lot with, you know, typhoons, volcanoes, earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, landslides, tornadoes, severe storms, hailstones. When I started reading about this is what happened in the Philippines over the last 10 years. I was quite surprised, to be honest with you, how many natural disasters they have there. So this is something that I would definitely look into if I was thinking about retiring there, you know. Is that an issue? Yes, because that's going to affect your life there. You know, that all them things have happened over the last 10 years, and you know, a lot of people have died in some of them disasters. So yeah, hopefully nothing would ever happen like that, but it's going to affect maybe traveling, you know, when you're always traveling around the country. So that could be an issue in the Philippines and in Vietnam. I think less in Vietnam. Philippines seem the worst of the three. Now, if you look at Thailand, natural disasters, I mean, I've lived there the last 13, 15 years, however long now, I forget. And, you know, in Thailand, we just have floods, really. That's the main thing. And obviously, they had the earthquake in Burma, you know, this last year where it was felt in Bangkok. But that's a very rare event. That's only, you know, nothing's ever happened like that before, really, I think. And they had the tsunami down in Phuket in 2004. But, you know, natural disasters in Thailand are very uncommon. They don't really happen. So you haven't really got to worry about natural disasters in Thailand as a general rule of thumb. But if you went to the Philippines, yes, you would have to think about this and think about where you were going to live, because this could affect you. I was reading in Vietnam, there's 4 to 6 typhoons a year. That seems like what happens over there. They have kind of typhoons, so this would be something to consider. Yeah, that quite surprised me, actually. I knew there was a lot of natural disasters in the Philippines, but I didn't realise how many, you know, and that, I think, would affect your life if you went over there to retire. The next would be like the culture and the community there. Like I said before, the biggest expat communities, you know, and retiree communities are definitely going to be in Thailand for sure. It's just more established tourism there. There's more established, you know, expat community, retiree community. So that's going to be one of the biggest areas for that. If you're not bothered about that, then, you know, the other areas are going to be better. I think Philippines has quite a big retirement community too, because of the visa they have over there. So there's a hell of a lot of people retired over in the Philippines too. So there'll be big retiree communities over there. I don't think that many expats actually work over there. Maybe I'm wrong. Put it in the comments if you're working over in the Philippines. I think there's more kind of retirees over there. Because Philippines, yeah, people working online, but like in Thailand, there's a lot of teachers just working over here, actually, you know. But there's not many, you know, there'd be no teachers in the Philippines because they speak English. They don't need English teachers over there, like foreigners going over there. So, you know, straight away, there's no English teachers. And think how many thousands and thousands of English teachers teaching English as a foreign language abroad in Thailand in general, they're all over the shop, I can assure you. Another thing to be talk about, like we're talking about the culture and community, you know, a big thing to mention is, you know, the English level in all these countries. And, you know, just having my cup of tea. Thailand, generally, they only speak English well in the tourist areas. If you go out of the tourist areas, then English is poor. I'll be honest, because I've lived around, when I lived in Nonthaburi for 9 years, no one spoke English, I can assure you. It was like a few words and that was it. You'd come across the odd person who'd speak a bit, but generally no. If you go to the Philippines, a lot of people speak fluent English, and a lot of even people speak, you know, mediocre English so you can get by, you know, even with local vendors and stuff. Yeah, some won't, but a lot do, you know, it is a lot different. So Philippine wins hands down. Vietnam is, I think, similar to Thailand, if not worse, or the same as Thailand pretty much. I think they're probably worse at English because there's just not as much, there's not as many tourist places as there is in Thailand, like established tourist places like Pattaya, Hua Hin, Phuket, you know, Bangkok, Koh Samui, you know, them places are like full of English-speaking Thai people because there's so many tourists there. And I think Vietnam, they do have some places like that, you know, where there'll be good levels of English spoken, but not as many as Thailand, for sure. Just because Thailand's just a bigger tourist destination for a longer period of time. Vietnam is kind of a newer tourist destination where people are starting to go to more and more now in, you know, the last few years. You know, it was a little bit, you know, just less tourists went there before, you know, the last 5-10 years for sure. The next thing to talk about, because you're a retiree, remember, is safety. And safety is a massive factor. And I think, you know, Vietnam's fine. You know, there's not really heard about that much crime there. Obviously, there's petty crime like there is everywhere. But generally, I think Vietnam is a very, very safe country to retire to. Philippines, on the other hand, no, it has problems in certain areas. Some areas are okay, but certain areas in the Philippines, there's a lot of crime. So you have to kind of research this yourself, where you're going to live in the Philippines. I think it probably is a bit of an issue if you went there. I think most of the time it's fine. There's just certain areas, so you have to be a little bit careful. And obviously Thailand is a very, very safe country. You know, I bang on about it all the time on my channel. You know, it's a very, very safe country. There's very little crime here. Yeah, there's some petty crime for sure in some of the tourist districts, you know, and there's a few scams that go on around some very tourist areas, but generally it's a very, very safe place. The next topic would be like food and daily life, you know, living day to day in these areas. How does it feel? I mean, first talk about the food. I mean, I don't think any of you can argue with me. You know, Thailand has got some of the best food in the world and is world renowned, known for food. So, I mean, Thailand kind of wins hands down. In the Philippines, there's definitely a lot of Western food there. Even Filipinos told me when they came over to Thailand and they talked to me, they're like, oh, Thai food is kind of, even though they love their own food in the Philippines, you know, they really love the Thai food, you know, it is fantastic and people rave on about it. Vietnamese food is very much street food, and I think some of the food's fantastic over there. There's definitely a mix of Western and Vietnamese food over there. But I think, you know, there's a lot of Western food just in the big cities. I think if you went rurally, you would struggle to get, you know, Western food. And that happens in Thailand too. You know, you go to some real rural areas and sometimes you can't, but more and more Western food is popping up in rural areas too, because there's just so many Westerners all over Thailand now, even in little rural villages. So little Western places pop up all over the shop now. Transportation around Vietnam, very, very good. Domestically, very good. Got trains, buses, run up and down the coast there. There's some good flights, you know, international flights out of 2 of the main airports. I think traveling in the Philippines is an issue. You know, a lot of people talk about it when they go to the Philippines. Oh, my plane was delayed, or the bus was delayed, or, you know, I've heard this a lot of times, so it can't be just hearsay. So there's a big problem with travel around the Philippines. I think it's to do with, like, you know, there is a lot of natural disasters, a lot of flooding, there's a lot of typhoons, there's a lot of landslides, these kind of things, which affects the traveling, affects the roads, and you know, it's going to have an impact on you. Yeah, if you go to retire in just one place, maybe, yeah, it won't really affect you, you know, that much. But if you like traveling around a lot, then yeah, it could be annoying. And I've heard there's a lot of delays on flights and stuff over there. I think they're continuously trying to improve it, to make it better. But you can definitely travel all around the country, but you know, not half as good as Thailand. You know, Thailand's infrastructure to get around the country is amazing, you know, with buses, vans, train networks, you know, internal flights, domestic flights, international flights, you know, Suvarnabhumi Airport. You know, it's just the hub of Asia. You can literally go everywhere, from Don Mueang to the other airport in Bangkok. So I don't think there's any competition. It has to be Thailand that wins for infrastructure and being able to travel around Asia and internally. You know, I think it wins hands down, to be honest with you. And then the other thing, to really important thing that I just thought of, is like the internet connection. Now, I heard in the Philippines, because of all the natural disasters and, you know, storms that go on there, that the connectivity isn't great in the Philippines, you know, with the internet. Let us know in the comments if you think otherwise, but I have heard this off quite a few different sources about the internet, especially if you're on some of the islands and stuff. Vietnam, I'm not sure about. Let us know in the comments. I imagine it's very, very good, to be honest with you, around city areas. I think it'll be fine in Vietnam, but let us know in the comments. I'm not sure on that one. But I know in Thailand, you know, the internet connection's superb around the country. You know, it's very quick. And, you know, pretty much if you have the good provider, then, you know, you can get internet access everywhere throughout Thailand now. And it's very quick and very good for working online, or if you want to use the internet for work or other business over here. So yeah, there are the pros and cons of the 3 different countries, guys. You have to just weigh up which one suits you. You know, everyone's different. You know my favorite, so you don't have to say that, but you know, Thailand's my favorite. I've made Thailand my home for retirement, but you know, never say never. Every area is up and coming and changing, and that retirement visa and that other visa coming in the Vietnam looks good. So if that comes on, that could be a bit of a game changer to help, because I think that's a bit of an issue with Vietnam at the moment. If you can only go for 3 or 6 months, that's a bit of an issue, isn't it? Having to leave the country and stuff. That would be a bit of a problem. So yeah, I hope it helps you out, guys, if you're thinking about retiring in one of these 3 places. And I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you on the next video. Take it easy.